Uncertainty is present wherever we look, and oftentimes we see uncertainty as a negative thing, as a sign of danger. There is, of course, an evolutionary reason for this, but with this video, I would like to try to show the other side of uncertainty and why it is so important that we learn to actually accept uncertainty and at times even want it. Oftentimes we hear the phrase, ignorance is bliss, and I remember reading a philosophical paper that really stuck with me, especially the title, which was, if ignorance is bliss, then we should all be happy or ecstatic. I don't remember exactly the word that was used, but I believe that there's an insight that can be taken from this title, which is that, in my opinion, we never truly experience uncertainty. And so what I mean by this is that, of course, everything in our lives is uncertain to varying degrees, but we cannot know how life is going to be even in the next second, although we might have a good picture of it. But oftentimes, when we actually feel uncertain about a certain event and we feel anxiety or fear because we do not know the outcome, the fear that we are actually experiencing does not come from not knowing the outcome, but it comes from building some sort of artificial certainty towards an outcome that we fear. And so let's use an example of health anxiety. You're afraid that you might develop a certain health condition because one of your family members developed it, and so you're afraid that there's a genetic link that is going to cause you to, also struggle with a certain condition. And so here, there is, of course, an uncertainty. You do not really know if you're going to develop that condition or not. And you might have a narrative that will push you towards having more certainty or less certainty. But when that uncertainty comes to your mind, you're not actually focused on the not knowing. You're focused on the possibility, on some degree of certainty, that you will have that condition that you are so readily trying to avoid. And so I believe this is a cognitive truth, which is that our minds do not really process uncertainty. They just try to find an alternative motive, an alternative reason. And so we get stuck on this idea that we are actually fearing uncertainty, but we're not. We're fearing a certain outcome in which we have built artificial certainty. And because we have built that artificial certainty, we become afraid of it. The way we perceive uncertainty is also prone to a certain degree of selectivity. So for instance, in the case of OCD, you will find people having a very low tolerance for uncertainty in a particular theme, topic, while being perfectly okay with huge degrees of uncertainty in many other different topics. But even here, in the case of OCD, I believe that if you look within and you investigate your fears or your uncertainty, when that anxiety or fear arises, it's not the not knowing, it's more so the part of you that believes that the negative outcome will arise. And so we should ask ourselves, why does this matter? Why does this reframing, this shift in how we perceive uncertainty matter? And so I believe that this is an important insight because a lot of times we believe that we fear uncertainty because it somehow signals danger. But that is not the actual object of fear. And so a lot of times this low tolerance to uncertainty is what creates a challenge towards us achieving several things in our lives. I mean, a lot of our ambitions and plans are filled with uncertainty, and there is no real way to know whether we can achieve something unless we try it. And so I don't want to just talk about a romantic view of uncertainty. I don't want to be just here sitting saying that uncertainty is always good, because it isn't. I mean, if you have high degrees of economic uncertainty, such as your ability to pay the next rent, the ability to feed your family, that of course is a horrible uncertainty to have. But at the same time, for most situations where we are experiencing uncertainty, we can actually use it as a way for us to become more mentally flexible. Because when we are facing uncertainty, that uncertainty signals that there is a possibility for things to go in ways that we did not even conceive of before. And this idea that I just mentioned might be extremely scary, because we have this idea that unmapped territory is always dangerous. But a lot of times it isn't. And from my personal experience, a lot of times the best things that have happened to me were precisely those that I could not predict at all, that I just did not have any idea or concept that they were going to happen. At the same time, a lot of the things that are extremely difficult to manage in life, a lot of situations that are just difficult to handle, also came up by surprise. Things that I did not really have an intuitive idea that they could happen. So that there's this, of course, this duality to the situation. But all of this is just to say, and this is, of course, is known in positive psychology, that a lot of times our fears do not materialize. And at the same times, we tend to overestimate how a certain situation will impact us. And so we become too rigid in our mapping of the world. Something that I believe isn't discussed enough is how certainty can be extremely dangerous. And by what I mean certainty is, in essence, artificial certainty. So it's when you believe that you have obtained knowledge over something that you truly have not. And we have seen this unravel through human history, that a lot of times wars are driven over individuals who believe that they have ownership over the truth and that they are fully sure of a certain outcome, of certain facts. And so a meditation that I propose always is that we should bathe ourselves in some degree of uncertainty. We should remind ourselves that we are human. And because we are human, we have an extremely flawed perception and perspective of the totality of events that are around us. And that uncertainty, that specific uncertainty, I believe to be extremely beneficial to our personal development, because it is through the acceptance of that uncertainty that we can make better decisions, that we can be more open-minded to experience. In contemplative traditions, I believe there's even a koan, a meditation on how not knowing is most intimate. And so I believe that there is a true intimacy in just accepting the uncertainty that is all around us. And so part of the story of why we don't like uncertainty is, of course, evolutionarily programmed, because it is our mind perceiving a danger because it cannot predict what is going to happen. And since our minds are predictive machines, when you're not able to predict a certain outcome, that is, of course, going to drive some fear. But the other side of this is that fear over uncertainty is also driven by the ego. And this is especially true alongside a lot of intellectual and academic spheres where people truly identify themselves with a certain idea, with certain facts, and they become so attached to them that even when there is good evidence that those same ideas could be wrong, they refuse to admit that, because to admit that would mean to, in a way, fragment or threaten part of their identity. And so overall, what I truly believe is that we as humans need to become more aware of the uncertainty that is around us, the uncertainty over our ideas of the world, because we are building societies that are becoming more and more polarized, because people are becoming too sure of themselves, too sure of their own beliefs. And this is creating separations that will just continue to fragment our societies. And so bringing to mind, when we are too sure of ourselves in regards to a certain idea, it is always important to truly ask yourself whether that is truly the case. Can I truly be sure of this? And oftentimes the answer will be no, you cannot be fully sure of this, but that not knowing can truly be a path towards self-development. So hopefully you found this video useful, and let me know in the comments what is your opinion about uncertainty